Welcome to The Explainer. Okay, if you're a product manager, an engineer, or really anyone involved in building software, you're absolutely going to want to dial in for this one. Today, we're tackling the core conflict of modern product management, the crazy reality that the very documentation meant to align your team is actually stalling your velocity. We're breaking down a fascinating phenomenon known as the PRD paradox.
Okay, let's dive into this massive number right here, 30 to 50%. I want you to take a second and really let that sink in. Research actually suggests that product managers are spending up to half of their total working hours just drafting documentation. I mean, think about that for a second. You're hired to discover value, right? To innovate, to deeply understand your users' friction points. But instead, you're spending half your week wrestling with formatting tables and updating static requirement documents. It's wild.
And that leads us directly into what we call the PRD paradox. Basically, the more time you spend drafting these massive documents, the less time you actually have for the product discovery that drives real, tangible value. And honestly, what's worse is that it leads to this thing called document rot. We've all felt this agile fatigue, right? You spend a whole week perfectly crafting a product requirements document, and by the time the feature actually launches, poof, the document is completely obsolete. It literally turns a vital strategic asset into a tedious chore. So how do we actually fix this? Well, let's look at Section 1, Anatomy of Modern PRDs and the Essential Components. A modern PRD shouldn't just be a static repository. It needs to be a living blueprint focused entirely on the problem space.
There are 5 essential components of a truly high-impact PRD. First up, the strategic context. How does this actually tie back to your company-wide OKRs? Second, the problem definition. You need clear, hard, data-backed evidence of the user friction you're trying to solve. Third is the target persona, a really concise archetype of the user who's actually feeling that pain. Fourth, your requirements, which covers both functional and non-functional constraints, stuff like performance, security, and latency. And finally, success metrics. You absolutely need a North Star metric to measure if the release actually worked. I know, it's a pretty heavy methodology, but it's totally crucial for success.
And this brilliantly illustrates how those components actually come together in practice. This is a 5-part framework that you can literally use right now to structure crystal clear requirements. You kick things off with a 2-minute pitch executive summary for your stakeholders. Then, user stories that really focus on the who, what, and why. Step 3 is absolutely critical, scope and out of scope. This right here is how you stop feature creep before it even starts. Step 4 locks in technical constraints, like your dependencies, and Step 5 ensures analytics and tracking events are documented for that post-launch validation. It's just a beautifully digestible procedural way to structure a PRD.
But, okay, here's the reality check. Section 2, why traditional docs fail and the manual struggle behind them. We really need to talk about the sheer frustration of the 2015 era of manual documents.
Just look at the stark contrast here. On one side, we've got traditional workflows, static pages, massive formatting overhead, totally detached from the codebase. On the other side, we have shipped code, dynamic execution that represents actual engineering reality. The massive pain point here is that those traditional documents become completely detached from the reality of the code your engineers are actively shipping. It's like they're living in 2 entirely separate worlds.
To summarize exactly why this manual struggle is so damaging, the source highlights 3 primary flaws. First off, version control is essentially non-existent, which means teams are constantly working from outdated requirements. Second, the formatting overhead just eats up hours of valuable focus that you really should be spending on strategy. And third, because these documents are rarely integrated directly with actual engineering tools, they basically lose all relevance the minute coding begins. Which brings us to a massive paradigm shift. Section 3, enter the AI native PRD, the evolution. We are finally moving away from manual input to AI-augmented workflows.
Experts predict a pretty staggering shift. By the year 2026, over 60% of all product documentation is going to be AI-assisted. I mean, that is a massive jump from where we are right now. So the crucial point is that this evolution isn't just about doing things faster. It's fundamentally about cognitive offloading.
The goal here is actually quite simple. Automate the boilerplate. By letting AI handle all the tedious formatting, the structuring, and that repetitive data entry, product managers are suddenly empowered to shift their mental energy back to where it actually belongs. You can finally focus on the logic, the overarching strategy, and crafting an incredible user experience, rather than, wrestling with bullet points and page margins.
And that brings us to Section 4, one-click precision with Specky, the ultimate fix.
This is the cutting-edge tool that instantly replaces hours of manual drafting with an automated engineering process.
The source material highlights this incredibly powerful shift, moving documentation from a manual writing task to an automated engineering process. Honestly, opening a blank page and just staring at a blinking cursor is officially becoming a thing of the past. Documentation is no longer an essay you have to write, it's a structured asset you generate.
Let's move to and see how this builds across the timeline. We started way back in the 2015 era, which was totally characterized by hours of manual drafting and a ton of legacy friction. Today, we're at the stage of one-click intent, where we use AI-native interfaces to generate structure instantly. But look at where we're heading. The future is all about machine-readable blueprints. We're rapidly moving toward generating comprehensive, structured PRDs in seconds that engineering systems can actually understand natively.
To break down exactly how this is being applied, let's walk through Specky's 3 key features. First up, one-click generation. You simply input your objective and the system translates that raw intent into a full-scale schema. Second, living blueprints. These aren't just your standard text files, they are machine-readable structures that actively bridge the gap between your product strategy and the actual engineering execution. And third, reduced cognitive load. The system automatically enforces architectural rigor for you, so you don't have to constantly play police officer with the document's formatting or consistency.
Look, documentation is absolutely necessary to align your teams, for sure. But the friction surrounding it, that's definitely not. By abandoning these manual processes for AI automated workflows, you can reclaim hours of your life from document rot. So I want to leave you with this final, provocative thought to take back to your teams today. Will you spend today writing or shipping? Thanks so much for joining me on The Explainer, and I'll catch you next time.